Lowest prices are just the beginning.
All right. Now, it's only been 9 minutes of fluffing around while we're in the start of the stream. But for those that are listening on the recording, you're probably wondering why it's just Wonel and I. The truth is, Sticks, Tom, and Z all got liquidated. We're the only ones left, and that's what we're going to do. No. I thought of the idea that it would be nice that we kind of go a little bit slower. Yeah. Go a bit slower pace and allow the bros the opportunity to talk about some specific things that are important to them as a little bit of a reflection, so they can look back on this in years to come and kind of compare their thoughts, how they were feeling, if they were right or wrong, if they wanted to be so bold and talk about any sort of predictions. But I just wanted to be able to create an environment where I ask some questions and they get the opportunity to answer them, which I think is kind of cool. Wonel and I did consider doing this interview with our cameras on, but Wonel is just much more handsome than I am, and I didn't really want to have that insecurity coming onto me. So he's decided to be generous enough and just use his own PFP, which is quite nice. I do have Wonel's address, date of birth, full name, social security number, bank account, and BSB, of which I'll post in the description below, so that way you guys can judge how successful he is in crypto when we do the hard-hitting questions. So without any further delay, we'll kick this off. If you are listening on the live stream, feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and if we've got some time at the end, we may go through there. So, how are you, man? Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being the tester, and also thank you for helping me through all the technical difficulties to get to here.
No worries. No, thank you, bro. I'm good. I am on my Great Northern, my third Great Northern of the night, and one Corona. So I'm nicely buzzed, but just getting started. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes.
I like how you've decided to share with me how many Great Northerns you've had. You know, that's just how much stress I've caused you with trying to, work a streaming deck. But yeah, I suppose that works.
Look, to be honest, I've been in. Yeah, I was gonna say I've been in Townsville for like 2 weeks, a bit over 2 weeks now, and I've almost finished my second carton of beer. So that is how life's treating me right now.
I love it because it's the weather for it as well, right? You get home from working, you're out. You're out of where you're currently living to do work, and so might as well crack a cold one and stare at the charts, jump on calls with the bros, and shoot the shit, which is good. I wanted to start from the beginning and ask you about your first experience with crypto, and then what made you get involved.
Okay. So I guess probably my first ever experience with crypto was when I heard about it initially, and I remember leaving high school. It was probably around '09 at the time, in the back end of '09, and then it was probably early 2010s. And I had a friend of mine that was addicted to what was kind of like the Reddit at the time called Dig, and he was always pretty early to stuff, and he was telling me about this Bitcoin thing, and then he was telling me about it was $10 or something, and then it went to $100. And he was like, "Bro, imagine if we bought that Bitcoin thing, we would have made so much money." And I was like, "Holy shit!" And then just disregarded it at that point. I'm like, "Oh, it's gone up a lot, so whatever." And then about a year later, I heard about it, or a couple years later, it was $100 went to $1,000. I was like, "Oh, well, I'm too late now." So he continued to ignore it for the rest of my time, and then 2017 came around. And I was at a house party, and there was this girl that I didn't really think too highly of, and she was trying to tell me how Bitcoin was the future of finance and all of this shit, and I was like, "You're fucking retarded. This thing's not tangible. There's no value in anything that's not, it's not like gold. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard about." And continued to fade it. And then 2020 came along and COVID happened. I got a fat bonus from work. I was a avid listener of the Investors podcast at the time, and I was trying to buy stocks, so I bought a bunch of stocks after the COVID crash. And the one guy on the Investors podcast, his name was Preston Pish, and he had talked about Bitcoin like on and off for years. But at this point, like he was like, "Look, the halving's coming up. You know, interest rates are at zero. You know, and just like that whole thesis at the time, and it just like clicked with me, and I was like, wow, I've seen this happen 2 or 3 times before. I know what happens when this generally occurs. Like the setup for this is so much better now because of like the zero interest rate environment thing. I'm going to go and buy some Bitcoin. So I did. I bought some Bitcoin in July 2020, and then held it. And then I remember January 2021, it was up significant. It was Christmas time actually, and I was up significantly from where I bought it. And I was listening to Bitcoin podcasts like every single day. And for Christmas, I bought my brother and his girlfriend $50 worth of Bitcoin, and I shilled my parents Bitcoin. And yeah, it was pretty memorable. So that was probably my first intro to crypto.
Yeah, nice. Were you shilling them on Bitcoin specific, and was that around the time of 2020 Christmas heading into 2021?
Correct. Yeah, I was shilling them on Bitcoin specific because I didn't believe in any other crypto because every other crypto was a scam.
Yeah.
Um, and Bitcoin was, you know, hard money. You know, the dollar is going to zero. You know, you want to have all your money in Bitcoin. You know, it was like the proper Bitcoin maxi mindset that I had at the time. Like I was telling them about the Fed and all sorts of shit and yada yada. And yeah, like they were just like, this is funny money. And I kind of look back at that time and I laugh a little bit because, you know, it was quite euphoric. Um, but yeah, it was a pure Bitcoin maxi mindset at the time.
Yeah. Because you mentioned a couple of times that you had an experience where people told you about crypto, especially from Bitcoin going from $10 to $100. And then I thought it was quite funny when you said you were at a party and there was a girl there that you didn't particularly were fond of that told you about crypto in 2017. Do you think it has something to do with the fact that the people that tell you about this information you don't really respect that much, and therefore whatever they're trying to tell you about, whether it's like Bitcoin or whatever was popular at the time, would have swayed your perspective on getting in sooner? Do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, I think that is a big aspect to it. Now that I think about it, I think had the right, like when that first person told me when it was like 10, like to $100, like the whole thing at the time was just like it was the internet money
Yeah,
and you know people were using it to buy stuff online and it just went up a lot. So it was kind of like, oh, cool, but I didn't really like look into it much more than that.
yeah,
When I heard it subsequently later, I think there was people in my life, some like one of my best mates who I like respect heavily. I was like not really in the financial position to be really going out and investing at the time. Um,
yeah,
like I was paying off debts. I wasn't really like ready to go and like throw some money into anything, like let alone stocks right at the time.
yeah,
But I was trying to get myself ready and I would talk to my friend, who's like one of my best mates, about stocks and everything, and sort of we would share opinions about like Bitcoin and that. And after hearing about it from these people, and like he wasn't interested, so I was like, well, I respect him. He's way smarter than me at this. He's got skin in the game and like investing in that. He's not interested, and you know, I've never even tried anything, so
yeah,
you know, I'm not gonna bother. But yeah, you're totally right. I think you know the same thing goes with like Ethereum and like all of those other coins. Like uh, I only rolled into that like much later on.
Yeah.
But like the reason I respected Bitcoin in the first place was I'd listened to that podcast for so long, and I'd respected those podcast hosts.
Yeah.
Um, and his opinion was the one that made me switch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense as well. One of the things I wanted to ask you as well is how much do you think that swayed you initially to buy that decision? How much do you think it was impacted by the subjective opinions of the smart people that you trusted to sway you, or your own technical understanding of what the asset was, if that makes sense?
Um, yeah, yeah. So I think like I remember like quite vividly like the moments when I was listening to those podcasts at the time.
Yeah.
Because I drove a lot, and I remember being in the car, and I remember being in a particular area, and for whatever reason, I think like the supply, like fixed supply, the infinite money printing period, seeing the markets crash the way they did, um, I think, or it just like the explanation of just being. I think the thing that kicked me was like, hey, there's a fixed supply. The issuance is about to half.
Mm.
To me, it was just like a physics thing at that point in time. Like I'm an engineer,
Yeah.
and like that sort of mathematical thing just made sense. It's like you can't create energy nor destroy it. And it's like, okay, we've got this fixed amount of thing, and we're about to um, halve the amount that we're going to issue out. And there's a lot of cheap money available, and people are trying to find something that's not the US dollar. And at the same time, there was all the stimulus checks and everything going around too. So I just felt like, and not knowing much about financial markets outside of stocks at the time, like I was like, this just makes sense to me as like a asymmetric risk reward. And one of the things that I think really pushed me over the edge was the guy was saying, even if you risked 1% of your portfolio, that asymmetric upside meant that that 1% could make a much larger portion of it. So to me, I was like, well, I could just put this small amount of money in here. And if it goes up a lot, then holy shit. And if I lose it, then, it's not the end of the world. And so I think that risk reward and that asymmetric upside is really like what clicked into my head. And my risk appetite was much different back then as well.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it was a collection of timing, especially around like near your zero interest rates. COVID just happened with the fiscal stimulus that was on its way, as well as the podcast that you listened to that talked about it as an asymmetric bet and why it is important to own with a lot of the technicals behind it. So
Yeah.
it was pretty much it's what it sounds like is the whirlwind of like literally everything lining up for the 2021 pump essentially into 2021 or
Yeah,
2020 pump into
exactly.
2021.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, you started off as a BTC maxi. Um,
Mm,
when because I think everyone kind of does to a certain degree. Um,
mm.
how did you find the transition from being a BTC maxi into, I mean, you can start with ETH and then move your way down. But basically, I kind of want to dive into the differences or the way that you managed the idea that there was more money to be made versus the technical underlyings of like the investments that you made. So, like, how you navigated that situation.
Sure. It's actually kind of funny. So one of the things when I was listening to investors podcasts and the people that he'd interview all the time,
Yeah.
and there was also another one what Bitcoin did, and I forget the host name of that one, but he was pretty big at the time too. But they used to talk about Ethereum and Vitalik, and I remember there was an interview with Lynn Alden,
Yeah.
and she was talking about how Ethereum has Vitalik, and he's kind of like a religious leader. It's kind of like a cult, and everything that she was saying about it, I was like, this just sounds so shit. I was like, at least like with the whole Satoshi thing, like it's more like a Jesus figure than anything else. Like I could rationalize that, and just ETH just sounded so shit. I was just like, this just sounds like lunacy.
Yeah.
So I actually avoided ETH for quite a long time. But the trigger point for me was so January 2021, the GameStop saga that happened. And I was a mega Reddit user at the time. I didn't use Twitter at all.
Yeah.
When I was on Reddit, I was in the Wall Street Bets sort of subreddit a lot. Just I thought it was funny, and like I thought the lost porn was pretty interesting. Like it was just funny to watch. I couldn't trade options or any of the crazy shit that the Robinhood people were doing.
Yeah.
So it was just more like a observational thing for me.
Yeah.
But then the GameStop thing happened, and like I saw it like double, triple, and then like I was like, oh, maybe I should buy it. No, no, no. And then eventually like I bought a lot, and then I got caught up in the hype of like, oh my God, the shorts are gonna have to have to buy, and this is gonna go to the moon. Like even if I buy like, a few $100s, like this could be a lot of money, like just naively.
Yeah.
And I just come off the back of like 4 or 5xing my Bitcoin position. So I was quite confident in myself.
Yeah.
And like it just seemed like the best whirlwind of events. Like Bitcoin's gone up a lot, money's going to nothing, like blah blah blah. Didn't really understood how like markets work and like market orders worked and limit orders worked or anything like that. So anyway, I was like up all night, like watch my GameStop position 4 5x, and then Robinhood. Basically Robinhood halted trading, and I was using an app called Stake,
Yeah.
and the clearinghouse that Stake used also halted trading.
No.
And I was just like, what the actual fuck? And Stake was like, look, this is out of our control. Like, we can't do anything about it. Like, it's just a clearinghouse. And I was like, what the actual fuck? Like, you guys have ruined it for everyone. And then I went like full autistic, like spazzing, like, okay, what's a clearinghouse? How does that work? What's T+2? And I just like full deep dived into it because I'd incurred a loss, right? Like, well, I don't think I incurred that big of a loss, but I was like the future potential of what I thought I could get. Like it all went wrong, and I was like trying to then back justify what went wrong.
Yeah.
And it was at that point in time I kind of realized how fucked up the financial system was, and like the fact that like stocks take 2 days to clear and all of this stuff. Whereas like I transferred Bitcoin from like a wallet to another wallet, and it was like there. So I was kind of like, that's shit.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that happened at the same time was during that period, I got onto Twitter.
Yeah.
Because during the GameStop period, there was a post that came out, and there was an account called Nope It's Lily, and someone like was shilling their Twitter account because they had this net options pricing effect model, and
net options
that
pricing
got me
effect.
to Twitter, and then so it was like a model that basically she could show, and it worked really well. It was basically showing how much the price of a stock was actually dictated by options,
Okay.
rather than through the like spot buying essentially.
Yeah.
And she had this model, and yeah, it was like everyone at GameStop was jumping on it, obviously, because they're all options fucking retards. But yeah, so anyway, got onto Twitter, followed all the people I'd been listening to. Slowly, the algo gave me more information. Elon Musk was a big person on Twitter I was following because he'd bought Bitcoin with Tesla.
Yeah.
And then one day he tweeted a picture of the Doge dog, but it was like the Arthur might know, but it's that one where like the chick's like facing the wall, and like the guy's like praying with his hands, and he's like,
Yeah.
please. And it was
Yeah.
like the Doge dog, and it was like very subliminal, right? But straight away I was like, wait, that's Dogecoin. I know Dogecoin. So I like loaded up a few grand into Binance, bought Dogecoin, watched it like 4 5x in like an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy fuck. And then I was like, holy shit, this is gonna moon. And then I watched it round trip over the next like 2 weeks. and then I was like, oh fuck, I could have sold that. And anyway, so that was like how I got into anything outside of Bitcoin. And at that point in time, I started getting more drawn into crypto Twitter slowly but surely,
Yeah.
um, for the next few months.
That's a really great story. I think it's quite funny that your next experience outside of BTC is Dogecoin, and you're making a 4 or 5x on valuations that were like insane, right? Like these were in the
Yeah,
almost 100 billions, and volume traded on these assets probably haven't been seen since. So that's really interesting. And I also think that the fact that you've had that experience with Wall Street bets and you were there when the trading was halted for Robinhood, because I kind of remember that period of time as well, and it really made me I don't know if triple down or double down is the right word, but it really made me grow fonder of the whole idea of decentralized something coming out of crypto during that period of time. So that was interesting to get your story.
for
So
sure.
after Doge, did you like transition to being like, well, this thing's gone down. Why has it gone down? Oh, it's a meme. And then you kind of like went from there to explore other chains.
Um, so I think what had happened at that point, so I'd done the Doge thing,
Yeah.
and then because I think I initially on ramped using BTC markets, and I don't know if you've ever used BTC markets, but it's pretty shit. Like the user interface is terrible and all of that. And I got onto Binance after that, after being like sort of realizing that there's a different exchange and it's got like a mobile app and
Yeah.
whatnot. So I remember looking after I bought Doge. I think I bought Doge through. I just signed up to Binance to buy some more Bitcoin, and then I'd seen all these other coins, and it didn't make sense to me whatsoever. But I always saw that they had like multiple percentages up every day,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, but it's always random. And then like after Doge, then I like sort of looked at the sex coins a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and I think at that point I was starting to see a few more accounts on crypto Twitter. I remember Kaleo, the
Yeah.
the um the KOL.
Yeah.
I remember like seeing a few of his like calls, and then like so I started like trying to follow him a little bit, and then got burnt on like all of them.
Yeah.
And then I then saw there's Cardi B, Shadi B or something was another one,
Yeah.
that I was following, and she was doing calls, and I was trying to follow into them, and like just all the time, like just rotating in and out of shit on Binance. I didn't touch my Bitcoin stack,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, just lost money on all of it. So I was like, oh, that's shit. So anyway, at that point in time, um, I didn't really do anything else on like on chain or anything. I was on Binance still.
Yeah.
And then it was May 21 when the nuke happened. And actually, I remember on the day the nuke happened, there was a ICP came out, the Internet Computer Coin,
Yeah.
and my friend shilled me ICP, and so I was like trying to buy ICP, and yeah, just nuked that went to fucking zero real quick. Um,
Because it launched
and
at such a large
Bitcoin started
FDV
nuking.
as well, didn't it?
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. It Bitcoin started nuking pretty hard, and I tried to sell on the way down,
Yeah.
but then I'd like rebuy back in, and then I'd sell on the way down, and I was like trying to exit out of my Bitcoin stuff because I was like up so much, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, wait, no, I can't like give all of this back. But then like I would buy back on the way down, and then it just kept dipping and dipping and dipping, and then eventually I just like I think I got out at like 40K or something mostly.
Yeah.
And then the next few weeks, I saw that Shadi B account like retweet a Trader SC video.
Yeah.
And it was a video like prior to the dump. and he was it was one of his usual market videos, and he was like, all right, ledgers, like blah blah blah. It's like, we see this, we've got a higher high, higher low, higher high, lower low, lower high. And he's like, so we're gonna, and he like drew out the pattern of what it was gonna do, and then like where it was gonna go to next. This is like, and it had the timestamp and everything of the video, because like he'd posted it before. And I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit, this guy totally called it. This is insane. How, like, I need to learn how to read charts. Like, I'm such an idiot.
Yeah.
And then full went down the trader route. And at this point, I hadn't really touched chains or anything like that. I was just fully like getting into the TA trader type thing. It's
Yeah.
like religiously watching trader SC videos like every day, and or every week whenever it come out, and then eventually found like crypto cred, Donald, and then like slowly started learning that side of things.
Yeah.
And then I started buying ETH because people were talking about ETH, and it slowly became more accustomed to me.
Yeah.
But during that time, there was a lot of people shilling FTX. So then I joined FTX, and I was using it, and I was like, this is awesome. I can set my stop loss and my take profits at the time that I place my order. That is awesome. So like, as someone that's learning like TA for the first time, you're like, wow, I can be like, I want to set a limit order here. I want to have my stop loss here. I want to have my take profit here. You click the button once, it's done. It's all set up for you.
Yeah.
Whereas Binance didn't have that. None of the other exchanges had that. So I'm like, this is great. So I like basically like went full FTX. And as a result of going full FTX, I saw all of the Solana related stuff.
Okay.
And when you're on the FTX app, they had Serum and Radium, which everyone knows now because everyone uses Radium, because of the liquidity pools and that, and using it's terrible, and it's just as bad as it was back then. But yeah, so I saw Serum, saw Radium, and there was another one called Step. There were like 3 coins that FTX had perps for, and you would get free coins of these if you staked your FTT. So anyway, I looked into Serum because I was like, what is this thing? And I realized that it was basically FTX centralized exchange app, but on chain.
Yeah.
And the interface was like just the same. And I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I was like, how do I use this stuff? So it was like, well, you make a Solana wallet, transfer your money here. So I started using it a little bit, and I was like, this is absolutely insane. And I was like, I can not be on an exchange, but still feel like an exchange. And it's fast like an exchange. And I was like, this makes so much sense to me. So then I started like doing stuff on chain with Solana. And that was like my first on chain experience.
With Solana? Wow. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
That's super interesting.
So, yeah,
So when
very different path.
Yeah, man. What were you when all the because DeFi like I'm assuming you found Solana a little bit later in 2021. But what were you sort of experiencing or making of the DeFi 2020 or DeFi trade at the start of the cycle? And then to add to that as well, were you looking at NFTs on Ethereum at that period of time, or what was your experience with NFTs at that point?
So I literally had no idea about DeFi or anything like that at this point in time.
Yeah.
So to me, if I take it back to my story with GME and like the clearinghouses and T+2, the thing that clicked with me the most was I saw this as like, hey, like a crypto centralized exchange is one thing, but the risks are still there.
Yeah.
Because, the exchange could still decide, not to do it. And being a previous Bitcoin maxi, they're not your keys, not your coins. Like I saw a problem that needed to be solved.
Yeah.
And that problem was, if you don't have possession of these assets, then, even if you own a stock, that stock could be worth nothing if the clearinghouse doesn't want to process it, or the broker that you're with doesn't actually have the certificate to say that you're actually the owner of the stock,
Yeah.
because of the way that they could lend out your stock to other people and so on and so forth. So to me, I saw this as like a problem that needed to be solved. And when I was using the product, I was like, this solves this problem, and the transactions settle instantly, and you can validate these transactions on chain through a block explorer. And I was like, holy shit, this makes so much sense. So to me, I wasn't exposed to any of the DeFi stuff with the yield and lending and borrowing.
Yeah.
I was just like, the problem that needed to be solved was trading,
Yeah.
and this solved that trade problem. It was the centralized limit order book, and that's what Serum had. So I could see the limit order book much the same as I could see it in exchange.
Yeah.
You could place bids and asks. The settlement was instant. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But the Solana at the time, the wallet was Solid Wallet, and it wasn't like like MetaMask or anything like that. So my first exposure to an on-chain wallet on my PC was Solid Wallet, which is absolutely horrendous. And
Throwback.
outside of that, I'd only ever had experience to a Bitcoin software wallet, and I didn't really understand how wallets worked at the time, and
Yeah.
I didn't understand what people meant by cold wallets and hot wallets and a hardware wallet. Like, I thought a cold wallet and a hardware wallet was somehow very different.
Mm.
And it took me a while to sort of get my head around it. So yeah, no exposure to DeFi, no exposure to what Ethereum was doing or anything like that. Didn't even know how Ethereum worked, until it was probably a couple months later. It was in August. I was starting to see chatter around NFTs pop up.
Yeah.
And there was an account that I'd followed for 6 to 7 months at that point, or probably a bit less, but it was Jeebus. And
Yeah.
Jeebus had like this weird PFP at the time. I can't remember what it was. It was like a crypto punk or some sort. And I like saw all this chatter. And then anyway, I followed him quite religiously. I just thought like what he was posting was interesting, and he was like seemed to be early to stuff. And then he posted a picture of a pudgy penguin, and he's like, I didn't even like care if this is a poor financial decision. I just think these things are cute. And I saw that and I was like, fuck yeah, I agree with that. And I was at work. I was like sitting at my desk and I was like, fuck, how do I do this? And
Yeah.
I remember seeing people talk about MetaMask for like months on end. And like I just didn't really get it, or like didn't have the curiosity to explore that much, because like people were always whinging about gas and didn't really get what gas was or anything like that. Because when I used Solana, like the fees were so low, like you didn't even notice. Like, so I'd throw like $100 onto Serum and like you could play around with it. And I was like, oh, this is cool to use. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I saw these penguins. I saw OpenSea, and because people had been talking about it, I was like, all right, I got to use this OpenSea thing. Okay, how do I buy it? Okay, you need MetaMask. Okay, so I downloaded MetaMask. I
Yeah.
was like, all right, went on to buy FTX, like transferred some money to my MetaMask, and then I was like, I think penguins were like $500 or like 300 for.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was at the time. I think it was like $300 when I saw them. So I transferred $500, like US at the time, to like my wallet. And then I was like, all right, let me try and buy it. But I didn't know how to buy. And there was like bids and like whatever. And I didn't know what this ETH thing was. So I was like trying to get the swap to USDC, and I was swapping it through the app. And then like I realized that like you're not supposed to use USDC, and you should like look for it. Took me ages to actually figure it out. And the price kept going up of these penguins. So I was like, fuck, fuck, fuck. So I just like bought the first thing that like actually worked. But in the process of doing it, because of all the bids that I did, my account kept dropping. And I was like, why do I keep losing money?
Yeah.
And then I realized what gas fees were. And I was like, holy fuck, like I've lost like $150, $200 just in gas fees. So I had to like top up more money onto the wallet. And then I bought the penguin. And that was
Wow.
like my first on-chain like like experience then.
Well, yeah, that's really wholesome that the penguin that you, or penguins that you decided to buy at the time, have still made it this far, and I think people listening now, hearing about penguins being at $400-500, are probably just like, shaking their head at how expensive they are now, even after their recent decline. I
It's
find
still
that
the same one.
still the same one. Fuck, that's awesome. I find it so interesting that your
Yeah.
experience with MetaMask came in August, and your experience with gas came after using Solana. I think that's like very interesting to hear that you've like played around with MetaMask. You've tried to swap from ETH to USDC and back and forth, and then you go to do the transaction and it says you don't have enough for gas, and you're like, why the fuck is it worth this much? Because back then, and you'd know this, the mint fees and the chain was like very, I don't even know what the correct word is, but when you were minting stuff or doing swaps on mainnet, it was like $300-400 to get in and out of like complex smart contract positions. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
It
super
was.
interesting that you've done that there. Um, Fast forward into the end of the mania in 2020 to 2021, it come into the bear market. What changed for you in terms of beliefs, and what do you feel like you learnt or gained from the mania that was the previous cycle?
Ooh. I think the thing that really um, drove it home for me, I think so after that period with the NFTs and like watching that run up, I had a really shitty period during that May to August period where like I was over trading, and
Yeah,
had I just not touched anything, I would have been better off. But at that point in time, I was like, right, I see this on-chain stuff now. I'm going to get into it. So I started using products, and I started actually just using it to try and understand it. And someone that was like, someone that was a hobbyist coder and a hobbyist technology sort of person, I was like, right, I just need to actually go and use and understand this stuff, and maybe that could be my edge. Which then worked because like I got into AVAX, bridged early. I got the good bridging airdrop, which was like 2 grand. I like made ENS domains just because I wanted Wonel.eth.
yeah,
I discovered DeFi kingdoms really early. Like I was doing all of this like super like early sort of activity type stuff.
yeah.
I
Like
was
proper
like big
exploring.
degen on Harmony Chain. I was like degening there, proper exploring, right?
Yeah,
And which worked out really well for me. And really multiplied my portfolio like something stupid. So by the time it hit like May or April 2022, pre the Luna crash,
mm,
I went from like low 5 figures invested, or I think I'd probably like, it was probably like mid 5 figures invested at that point in time because I kept adding, but I
yeah,
was getting all these free airdrops as well. And like if I count those airdrops and all the money I lost from that, like I gave away so much money in the
yeah.
process. But then I still ended up like 6 figures at April 2022, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
Oh,
But at that
nice.
point, I was like, "No, we. This is the super cycle. This is like this is what we're gonna do." And then yeah, I just proceeded to watch all of my investments like go down and down and down and down and down. And I drank the Kool-Aid so much, and I became like super emotionally attached to a lot of these bags that like I just kept watching it go down, and I was like, holy fuck, what the hell has happened here?
Yeah,
Um, and so I didn't walk away like with any of the success that like I gained, and I ended up being net negative on like what I'd put in to begin with. But I held a lot of my like I kept all my NFTs, like I kept a lot of stuff, but I was still using products. I was still like trying to understand stuff, but much less so than I was in the previous year. Um, but at that point, I'd become so addicted to crypto Twitter and the social aspect of it that I couldn't not um, like leave, if you know what I mean. So like that to me was more like I gone through my first cycle. I have round tripped basically everything I put in, and I everything I potentially could have had.
Yeah.
You know, where did I go wrong? And there was a up only podcast where Kobe said, and it stuck with me. There was for a long time, and it was like the people that tend to make it in crypto are the people that stick around when things aren't fun.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, well, you know, I'm going to stick around. Like my personality type allows me to sort of do so.
Yeah.
I found this is the most like mentally stimulating thing that I've got. Like I don't know anything else that keeps me this engaged. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I stuck around.
Yeah.
And you know, continued to use stuff, continued to research, and formulate my own thoughts. And looking back, it was actually such a great time, despite my portfolio not being great. But it really gave you a chance to like not be caught up in like fucking 20 different things happening every day, and you didn't have to lock in. You just had to be present,
A bit slower
which I think
pace.
was really good.
Yeah, I was gonna
Mm.
ask because you did say along the lines of that you realized how much you drank the Kool-Aid when the bear market hit. Were you like looking at your bags, kind of thinking to yourself, "Why the hell did I like buy this?" Or did you generally have a belief structure and like investment thesis that was like, "Yeah, I bought these at probably like a high valuation, but long term, I still think these will hold out." Like, I think it's really incredible that you minted in the mania pudgies, and then still hold them today because I
I
think
didn't mint. I bought after mint, but
after
I
mint,
bought.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, to hold them to this
yeah,
day,
yeah, yeah.
I think is, in my opinion, probably one of the best trades for like a passive believer investor. Like you've reaped the benefits of the price appreciation, but as well as like the airdrops along the way. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think like the pudgy thing was like similar thing with the Kobe statement around sticking around.
yeah,
The reason I never decided to sell it was like in combination with the sticking around thing. It was there was some NBA player that was like, what NFTs do I buy? And this is like during like peak NFT mania. And Kobe said something along the lines of, you pick something that's had a cultural moment, something that's got lasting power. And by cultural moment, he said something like impacted in major media or something that's like going to stick in people's minds. And like Pudgies were like on the New York Times.
yeah,
Like there were so many things that like they had going for them in that initial period, such that like when all of the drama happened with them, and like it went to like point 0.5 ETH. Like I just remember being like, holy fuck, these things were once worth 4.5 ETH, and 4.5 ETH was like $4,000 ETH at the time, and then
yeah,
it like went down to like point 0.5. And I remember thinking like I should probably buy some here, but then I was like, oh fuck, like I can't do it. And then I didn't, which was a bit silly, but in hindsight, but hindsight's 2020. But that was the only thing that like made me stick to it, was just like I believed in it. That at some point in time, if crypto was to ever come back, these things had some sort of lasting power that none of the other ones did.
yeah,
And they never really achieved any big run that like it could have done. And so I was like, well, if they do come back, then I'm not going to sell it for this price. Like I was still always up on my initial investment. It was just something I was like, well, I'm better off holding it than not, and I'd rather just add more money and allocate to something else.
yeah. No, well done on that. Speaking of things not pumping, what was the bear market like for you?
So actually, it was quite good so 2022 was rough, obviously, because we had Luna, we had FTX. I actually didn't. I received so much drawdown from um DeFi kingdoms and that because I was so heavily allocated to it that at that point in time, everything else was just like, like it didn't affect me anymore.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I didn't even want to check how much my portfolio was worth or anything like that. I was just like, it is what it is now. And I've just got to live with it. So I was kind of fine with it, and I was all on chain. I was still like an on chain maxi. I had like all these hardware wallets, and I thought like this is still the way to go. So I started buying Bitcoin. I think I bought a little bit of Bitcoin after FTX, but I didn't size into it, which like I regret because there was still so much fear.
Yeah.
But I was still playing with stuff on chain. And then I think in 2023, I got the Arbitrum airdrop, the Optimism airdrop, for stuff that I'd done like 12 months prior. So
Oh,
then like
nice.
Arbitrum gave me like 4 grand, Optimism gave me like 2.5 grand. And so I got all these things for free, and it kind of like kickstarted me back up. And I was like, cool, I got some money again. I didn't have to put any more money in. Great. And I was starting to get bullish on like the crypto cycle again because like January 2023 was quite good.
Yeah.
I got these airdrops, which was awesome. And then the Pepe thing started happening.
Like the
Um,
on-chain ETH.
and annoyingly, I saw Pepe so early, but like I was just like, oh, I was being a bit lazy at that point because I was like, finally, I got some money back. Like I'm crawling back my port. Like this is good. And like Pudgy were pumping a bit. I think I bought Pudgies in 2022 December. I bought another Pudgy for 3.5 ETH. I was like, right, I'm gonna buy another Pudgy. Like that. That's what I'm going to invest in. So I decided to do that. Um, and yeah, then I got into a. I was in Japan. I was on Twitter. I had Jeebus on notifications, and the meme coin season was like kicking off in August.
Yeah.
In April, sorry. Um, and he was like, "All right, I'm starting a thing," and then it was just a Telegram link,
Mm.
and I was like, "Fuck!" So I jumped in, and then I jumped in, and Kobe was in there. I was like, "Holy shit!" And then it was like, "All right, boys, let's start a meme coin." And he like capped the group at like 250 people, and I was in, and like my
Nice.
best mate was in as well. I was like, "Holy shit!" We got into one of these things, and then like we were like, everyone was like trying to come up with like the meme coin name, and Boldly an artist was in there, like, and he was only just starting out at the time,
Yeah.
and he was like trying to do artwork for it, and like it was all like kind of happening. And then yeah, we all the max deposit for this like coin was like zero point 0.5 ETH, so
Mm.
we all put zero point 0.5 ETH in, and yeah, the coin launched, went up a shit ton. I watched it go from like whatever zero point 0.5 ETH was worth to like 60, 70K. And I was
Nice.
like, holy shit, this is gonna be like my gonna make it play. I was like, this is gonna bucks or something. And then there was a sniper that like fought the coin like early, and he was just like relentlessly selling like day after day. And then eventually I sold it for like 10 grand. But it was like from like $500 to like 10 grand. I think that's what zero point 0.5 ETH was worth. It was a bit more than $500, but it was like huge multiple return. So I still walked out all right. And that really like kickstarted my journey back for this cycle
Nice.
all over again. But at that point, like I'd become a bit more of an ETH maxi
Yeah.
with the ETH 2.0 proof of stake. So I really like got into that and became like a heavy ETH and Lido maxi. And I was just buying Lido and stuff like that. But like that was it reinvigorated my sort of belief system at that point in time.
Yeah. I'm glad you've talked about how much money you've been making because, like I said at the start, all of your personal information will be leaked at the end of this episode for people to target you. Um, Speaking of this
I'm really
cycle,
poor.
yeah, you got to talk about your losses more. You got to let everyone know how much money you've lost, so that way they feel sorry for you and they don't want to try and rob you. But um, uh,
To be fair, most of that just crawled back to my original starting point. So I felt a bit better about myself about taking risks again.
yeah, you did say something about six figures in there. Not sure if I heard it correctly, but you don't need to flex on us, man. Some of us,
Yeah, six figures went down to so that six figures went all the way down. I didn't actually measure it, but I think I must have went down to like $10,000
oh no.
after that. So it was a huge drawdown.
Max drawdown. Yeah, I was going to say some of us are three-figure warriors, just trying to really make our way in this world. Um, I wanted to ask a question around what changed for you heading into the next cycle. I mean, you may not have at the time thought there was going to be a next cycle, but you talked about being a BTC maxi right at the start back in like July 2020 after going down the rabbit hole as such.
Mm.
You talked about using Solana, and then you talked about your experience using ETH gas fees and kind of being a little bit not oblivious, but not quite into DeFi until a little bit later in that cycle.
Mm.
What was different about your belief system coming into this cycle in comparison to when you started out last cycle?
Um, okay, so I think leaving the previous cycle, I was like a multi-chain maxi
Yeah,
because I'd seen what ETH was doing. I was like bridging with AVAX, Solana, Harmony, Phantom.
yeah,
Like I'd use all of them, and the general like AVAX was great because I got to learn how EVM worked,
mm,
but I got to learn how it worked without paying gas fees that like were exorbitant,
yeah,
right? So that was a great experience for me to actually like use it and get to understand what I should and shouldn't be doing. So then when I did use ETH, a bit more careful, um, and so I left as a multi-chain maxi. Obviously, with the FTX stuff, my sort of affinity to Solana had died off quite significantly. And I think I'd left honestly as an AVAX maxi
oh really?
um, after 2021, funnily enough. Yeah. I was a big thing. Yeah, it's definitely an AVAX maxi. I really like subnets. I liked the idea of subnets. But then they just didn't really execute and just didn't really take off like the way that I thought they might have.
Yeah,
And then as I sort of understood ETH a bit more and understood like the cypherpunk sort of aspects to it a bit more, and then just like decentralization, and I really just went into that side of things rather than the tech side of things a little bit.
yeah,
And then I started understanding that like, you know, this AVAX was just really copy pasting a lot of stuff, optimizing a few little things, and like the validator stuff um, with subnets just didn't really make sense to me. Like if you're trying to do anything with decentralization, etc. And I didn't really know much about L2s and everything at
mm,
the time with ETH, but then I like learned more about ETH and L2s and all of that. And then with the ETH going to proof of stake, like I transitioned quite heavily as a ETH maxi because I thought, well, ETH's the most battle tested smart contract chain.
mm,
It is the most secure. It has the most TVL. Like if anything's going to be successful, it's like Bitcoin because it's been around for so long and it's been so battle tested. I taught myself how to like I made a few smart contracts. I made NFT minting DApp. Like I got it. Like I understood how ETH worked, and I was like, look, all these other chains slowly over time will die off because ETH will just swallow all of them because of its like long lasting dynasty.
mm,
But then I started using the L2s, And then I just got so annoyed with like the UX of the L2s. I was like, okay, we got these L2s, but like unless something's on the L2s, like I was just using ETH still. I was like, I've just got no incentive to want to use the L2. Like, yeah, gas fees are expensive, but like it's expensive because that's where people want to go. Like
Yeah.
it's like you can go to a party that has like a free entry, but there's no people at the party, or you go to the party that's got like a $50 door fee, but then that's going to be the best party. So you'll pay the
That's a
fifty
good
dollar door
analogy.
fee.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like that, so I kind of stayed along that line.
Yeah.
But in 2023, Ansem was talking a lot about Solana and about how the teams were still really active, like the dev teams.
Yeah.
And so I started like digging into it a little bit, and I like started to see the trade like thesis like start to make sense a bit more.
Yeah.
But because he was such a loud, popular person on crypto Twitter, and me religiously following a lot of his stuff because I discovered him quite early in 2021.
Mm.
Like, and then did well off of following him in 2021, but then proceeded to lose because of him in 2022 with DeFi Kingdoms and that. Um, I was kind of like wary of like anything that he said because like
Yeah.
there was a lot of like he was quite oblivious to the impact that he had on markets, and I just thought that was like either really ignorant or just scammy. So I had this like hesitation of like really sort of following through on anything that he was saying.
Yeah.
But then in 2023, back to Jeebus made a post about, hey, like coming up into this next cycle, you really want to be finding a social group. You really want to be trying to meet people. And because you need that support network to bounce ideas around and also to during the bear, because those connections are a lot better than people that you meet during the bull.
Mm.
And then that's when Sticks made he retweeted that post, and then that's when we all met, obviously,
Yeah.
from that point. And then that dinner that we went to, and then I think Z shielded Solana at the dinner, and that just clicked for me as being like, right, I think this makes so much sense. And then so I went full Solana maxi from that point on.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I always think that if it wasn't for the Brotato dinner that we had, and our good friend Z convincing us to stop overthinking and just buy Solana, we probably wouldn't be able to have
Yeah.
maybe received some of the benefits of that. I wanted to kind of touch on you saying that you became a little bit more of a Solana maxi. What did you? Because you mentioned that Anson was tweeting about the trade, and for our audience out there, the trade, from my understanding, was that it was undervalued in comparison to Ethereum, and I think that was due to how much it sold off with the FTX collapse and how beaten down it was. What made you kind of decide to leave, in your words, like the battle tested Ethereum, to then go down and be the Solana maxi?
Okay, so there was a couple of things at the time that I particularly remember. So so during that same time, like I got into DMT, like that my DMT story goes way back to
Mm,
2022. But so that was probably one of my bigger positions, and it did sort of well. But because I was using DMT or buying DMT, I was using L2s, right? Because the only way to buy DMT was through Arbitrum at the time. And the UX experience of trying to use an L2 was just so bad. Like you had all these wallets with like different amounts of ETH on like all these different wallets, and I hated MetaMask. I started using other wallets, which was fine, but
yeah,
like it was just painful. And like I said earlier, like my original experience was Solana. And I always enjoyed using Solana from like way back then because of the Phantom app primarily. Like the Phantom app, the user experience was always great. the amount of approvals and that you had to do when you were like signing transactions was way less, and things felt quick and instant. So when I decided, and the thing that really clicked for me from that trade, one, I understood like the relative valuation thing, and it didn't really buy into it that much because like I thought to myself like you could argue some of like AVAX was in a similar camp because of 3AC,
Mm,
because it also sold off pretty hard because of the 3AC liquidations. So I was like, why would Solana be like that and not AVAX?
mm,
But whilst Ansem was like, whilst I had my reservations towards Ansem, one thing that I always respected was that he did understand the technicals from like a technology perspective. And he mentioned around the dev activity, and I was in like I had enough people that I followed within the in crypto Twitter because I follow a lot of people,
yeah,
that I did see that bubble up. Like there was a lot of Rust developers, there was a lot of like Solana hackathon type stuff happening.
yeah,
And when he sort of like pointed that out, I was like, it is weird that there is still a lot of devs building stuff, and there's still a lot of teams that have built products for Solana and continue to do so,
yeah,
despite the fact that the token's like worth fucking zero. Um, and I was like, that is strange. And they did all raise like rounds at very high valuations towards the end of the bull market,
yeah,
and none of those teams released tokens. So I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So it's like they've all got huge runway. They never released a token, so it's not like their projects are worth zero. They've been able to continue to build over that time, and the fact that like there's evidence of them building and then they are releasing new stuff, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
yeah,
So I think that clicked for me a bit. Um, and I liked Solana's like localized fee markets, uh, having been experienced NFTs during the previous bull.
mm,
Like when you had an NFT mint at a certain time, you couldn't use the chain, and localized fee markets made sense to me. 'Cause I was like, well, that solves a problem that I've experienced before. So
yeah,
like all these different things that like it seemed to solve, and seeing that like Solana when I was doing this, but trying to do it as like the monolithic chain,
yeah,
and seeing what happened with AVAX and subnets, seeing the same thing happen with ETH and L2s, I was like, man, this technical approach of actually trying to scale via these different layers just doesn't seem to work for me. And what I thought would happen with Solana prior to me being a maxi was, yeah, Solana's gas fees are cheap, but they're only cheap because the token's cheap.
yeah,
But I didn't realize a lot of the technicals and how they're handling transactions differently.
yeah,
And to me, like as the way I like to pitch Solana versus ETH or anything else, or like just a monolithic chain versus anything else, is if you think back to like the early 2010s, you had Netflix, right?
yeah,
And Netflix came out, and Netflix was the streaming platform.
mm,
And I don't know if you remember what it was like when it first came out, but it had so many good TV shows. Like all the good TV shows came
mm,
out on Netflix. The content was great. Like anyone that was watching anything on streaming, they watched on Netflix.
yeah,
Then slowly over time, more streaming platforms came out, and it became more diluted, and the content became more diluted. And if you wanted to watch a particular show, you had to go to a different fucking streaming service, and then you had to pay for that streaming service. And then eventually you just stop watching TV shows because one, the content's not good, and two, the content that you want to watch is on something else, and then you have to fork out more money. So you're like, no, fuck this. So you just stop altogether.
yeah,
And then so the way I kind of saw it was kind of like that.
mm. Well, it makes sense because, you could probably argue that Netflix is like Ethereum, and then, Prime is AVAX, and Disney Plus is Solana, because Ansem would probably get cast as Snow White in the upcoming film. Um, that was a joke. But what I was gonna touch on was the complete point that you kind of made about the Ethereum mainnet chain in the previous cycle and how like insane the transaction fees were, um, because you talked about the like if there was a mint going on, like the other side, for example, like that was pretty late stage bull market. The other side, which was the
Yes.
BSC
Yeah.
land thing. I remember CL putting
Hmm.
out a tweet and he was like, "Oh, what
Yep.
the hell? I didn't realize that I just made a trade and it happened to be at the same time as the other side." And his gas fee was like something like I can't remember what it was. I don't want to say it was like tens of thousands of dollars because I don't think that was correct, but I do remember people spending actual ETH, not like point ETH, like actual ETH on claiming fees
I think he
for.
spent like I think he spent like 2 or 3 ETH.
Yeah, it was just something insane. And then I remembered from the previous cycle that people were kind of saying, "Oh yeah, man, you just got to find a time where the fees aren't so high to be able to do all that sort of stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, like that makes sense. Like that's something to do." And then like you kind of if you heard that again, you would think that something's broken because you would kind of reject that idea that the you would kind of reject the fact
Yeah.
that you'd need to make a transaction at a later time. It's like, you can't really like have a DEX on Ethereum mainnet and just be like, yeah, no, I better make a trade at another period of time and hopefully don't get liquidated in the high fee environment. So I think the way that you summarized the differences between ETH and Sol there make a lot of sense. Were there any other theses that you believed in or held coming into the new bull market, like maybe anything around NFTs or DeFi or any other sort of like blockchains?
So coming into the bull market, I was a big believer in the Brotato thesis, i.e., um, I really underappreciated early on, well, overappreciated is probably the better word,
Mm,
the fact that I thought that, okay, ETH staking, ETH yields, Lido governance, ETH ETF. Lido is the biggest market share. The ETH ETF might have a yield component to it,
mm,
and like this was like really early on, and I was like, the TradFi loves yields. Like I was a big religious follower of Degen Spartan, and it just made so much sense to me. Um, and so I think early on in 23, Degen Spartan was like, I think she said something along the lines of like ETH, Lido, Coinbase is like the three big things. Those are like my three big allocations because I really, really enjoyed Degen Spartan's way of thinking. It was quite high level, and I really appreciated a lot of her thoughts. But So I bought that was my three main positions. So I bought Coinbase like really low, which was awesome, and I still hold it.
yeah.
So that position worked out well, but Ethan Lido didn't. So those were like a couple of the theses. The other one that I had quite early on, and I think I told you guys at the when we first met the Brotato dinner, but I had a theory that we would that the cycle top would be at the halving.
Mm,
That was like my theory. It was like, and the reason I thought that was, um, given that it's the fourth cycle, um, the everyone's now conditioned. The fifth, I can't remember, but everyone's conditioned now to understand how these 4 year cycles work, right?
mm,
And everyone was getting really pre-prepared into it. And I thought, and this was like June, July. So this is like pre the ETF chatter and all of that. I was like, look, people are going to front run the cycle, the 4 year cycle, because they all know how it works now. Because like the first time, yeah, whatever. Second time, oh, happened again. Wow. Third time, holy shit, it happened again. Fourth time, it's like, okay, this is a fucking no brainer at this point.
yeah.
So everyone front runs it. And unironically, it actually was a top. It was a local top because we
Yeah.
we pumped again. But literally, like we did top. up at that point. But unfortunately, between the time I had that theory and when I got into Solana and that, meme coins happened and just completely erased my approach.
Yeah.
And had like stuck to it, like I probably would have sold at that time. But yeah, that was probably a strong theory that I had. Outside of that, I really thought that cash flowing crypto assets would make sense,
Mm.
because I thought that a lot of the degeneracy from the high yield stuff wouldn't really matter anymore. So what I was really trying to look for was things that had cash flow, which is why I liked things like Lido, because I was like, okay, how does the token get value appreciation? And so I liked ETH because I saw the value appreciation that ETH could get. I liked Bitcoin because I saw the value appreciation that Bitcoin can have. I liked Lido for the same reason. Solana I liked because of the relative valuation trade,
Yeah.
plus like the dev activities and all of that. But yeah, outside of that, I really didn't find anything that particularly interesting. And so I didn't really like venture outside more. But I still had an addiction to NFTs for
Yeah.
like I bought so many NFTs when things were shit, and just terrible ones that like I could have just bought more pudgy penguins. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, outside of that, I wasn't really particularly interested, just because I thought like the crypto thing gets more and more accepted in the populace over time, and I actually thought that there'd be more concentration in leader coins and less dilution out into the long tail, because people would get familiar with how these things go to zero.
Mm.
Um, and so I didn't think that we would get as much dispersion as we've and dilution, should I say, as we've got now.
Yeah.
But I didn't really consider the long-term effects of meme coins at the time, because the only meme coin that I really thought that I really saw at that point in time was Pepe, and I thought Pepe was like really stupid, as like a cycle bet,
Yeah.
which turned out to be a really stupid prediction as well.
Yeah, it's I think when you even look at the market cap of Pepe now, I think I kind of shudder at the fact that I literally witnessed the inception of it to get to where it was and didn't think it was a good idea to buy,
Yeah.
despite having people that we've even
Mm.
met, shill us on it and convince us that it is a very good trade to
Hmm.
take. I wanted to touch on, because you talked about meme coins. Obviously, not we haven't talked about it yet on here, but you've talked on obviously the larger
Mm.
Brotato catch-ups, and with me personally as well as publicly about your bullishness on meme coins. I wanted to get a bit more of an understanding of what made you bullish on meme coins as an asset class, and then also any of the specific picks that you have or had, and yeah, why you believed in them.
Um, so me, my first like so my obviously my first introduction to the memes was that four coin where I made like a bit of decent money.
Yes, yeah,
Um, I could have made a lot more, and it would have been great at the time, but obviously didn't. And so like that experience kind of like I think that threw me down the risk curve a little bit more.
mm,
Like obviously I had my pre-exposure with NFTs. Um, and even if you go back to like my original story where I was a Bitcoin maxi, but
mm,
then I played with Doge. So it's like I was always on like either one end of the spectrum or the other.
yeah,
Like I'd have like some sort of fundamental play and some really left field retarded play. And I tended not to play too much in the assets in the middle, just because I've found them like every time I did try and play them, like I just didn't really get anything that was that high volatility. Like I'd either make a little bit of money or just draw down a lot. And
yeah,
then it was kind of like, well, I either want like something that's not going to draw down a lot or something that's going to go up a lot. And if it draws down, then I'll, accept the drawdown. So I've always kind of been like that. But with memes, that August, September, October period of 2023, when we had SPX 6900.
Yeah.
What was the other ones? Ticker Bitcoin. There was a whole season of things that popped during that time. And I remember SPX 6900, and like I was like instantly hooked when I saw the video, and I just thought it was like the best thing ever. And like I threw like a very small portion of like my portfolio into it, and watched it like do some multiples, which was like really fun, and then watched it round trip, which sucked. Oh well, first of all, I did the multiples. I rotated those multiples into other memes, which those memes went to fucking zero, and then I just left the rest of my SPX bag, and then I watched that go to like fucking near zero, and I was like, well, that fucking not worth selling anymore because the gas fees will eat like most of it, so may as well just leave it. So then I did, and then when Solana started running up, it was always that you got to find some sort of beta play to like gain more Solana.
Yeah.
So like I was trying to do some more fundamental style plays. So like Z and I were like in Aurora, like a game, and then there was like some sort of roll bit style Telegram bots, because the Telegram bots did really well, like Banana Gun and stuff like in 2023.
Yeah.
So I was like doing all of those like known sort of quantity plays where like, hey, this did well over the last 8 to 10 months on ETH. So now this is on Solana. We should buy the same thing. And then they just didn't really take off. And then like the memes started popping up on Solana, and I was like starting to look into it, but I just was getting burnt. I was like trying not to touch my Solana stack too much. And then I saw like things like Popcat and then Whiff and then like things like that. And I avoided it, or like I lost some money on a few things.
Yeah.
And then I saw Whiff going up like a shit ton. So then I bought some.
Yeah.
And then I watched it like go down like 80% the next day. And I was like, holy fuck. And then Z obviously had his story with Whiff, and I was like, fuck this coin. I'm gonna then it ran up again, and then I was like, I made some money on it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start selling this thing. Because I'm making like really good money off of it, just as off my like little trading wallet. And then I just started buying more of it, and because it just kept going up. And then I I was like watching it, the volatility on it and the swings on it were insane. So I just kept buying, and then I got to a point where it like went down all the way again. This was like the 300 mil to like 100 mil range that it was in.
Yeah, I remember.
And then when it came, and then it came back to its like 300 mil point. And then I was watching UFC with Z on Discord, and I was like, Z, Whiff looks really fucking good. And he's like, fucking do it then. Bye. And I was like, all right, I will. So like just went in, and then fucking, the rest of the story after that. Like it just went crazy. And that was like pretty life-changing for me.
Yeah.
But I think from a thesis point of view, from memes, I think the thing that financial nihilism thing, I really started to feel internally.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes back to that cash flow thesis. I think like I already had that, like these coins need to have something.
Yeah.
And then the more I tried to and find something that was decent, the more I kept finding like all of these cunts that have got like super low entries. They've got these tokens with unlocks for days, and it's just like, bro, I don't want to play this game anymore. Like it's just the odds are not in my favor.
Like the high FTV stuff.
And then when all of this stuff started, the high FTV stuff, and even the stuff that wasn't necessarily high FTV, it just felt really like, especially on ETH, like meme coins on ETH felt really shit because you had honeypots, like you had to like do so much stuff to like go through a contract to make sure it was like valid. And it's just like, bro, like it's just too much. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
nah, like this is fuck. And like Solana had a bit of that, but most of it was just like pretty straightforward. And but the consequence of buying a coin on Solana was so low because of the fact that like selling was cheap because you
Mm.
didn't have fees, that like you could take more risk more often, and cut risk quickly. Whereas like on ETH, when you committed and you wanted to put in small size, like because you didn't want to go and throw like, decent amounts of money in, you could like throw in, sub $1,000 worth of, a coin, but then easily sell that if you needed to, but then, and it wouldn't cost you anything. But
Mm.
then if you got a 2, 3, 4x or whatever on that, like $1,000 that you might get from a few $100, like that was great. Whereas like if you did that on ETH, you sold it that $2,000, but then you paid like 10% of it in gas fees. So it's like
Yeah.
I put in $200, I sold for $200, but then I paid $200 in gas fees, so I got $1,800. So it was like tax. It's like earning money and then paying tax.
The Vitalik
And then
tax.
and then you had to pay tax on it afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
like Vitalik tax. So I was like, bro, like, and so I think that just made it like more easy for me to like fuck around with it a bit more.
Yeah.
And then like I'd only ever send like a small portion of like Solana to like this wallet, and I was like, I'll just risk this bit, and if it goes up a lot, great, and if it goes low, then I'll just stop. Which is what I did. And then I also did like on Solana, like when I like had my Solana.
Mm.
And then I did Jito. I got the Jito airdrop. That was like awesome.
Mm.
Like for something that I did like 2 weeks prior to the airdrop, which was crazy. So like I got like these capital injections, which were cool, and I think like that just all stimulated my risk appetite because I got free money. So I was like, well, this is over and above like my initial investment. So now I can take a little bit more risk.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think the way that you described looking for edge on Solana, when I think at the time you could probably recall a lot of the conversations were about why Solana shouldn't be compared to Ethereum and that it's like a scam
Mm,
chain and all this sort of stuff. You did
yeah.
touch on financial nihilism, and I think that that was a massive trend throughout 2023 and even 2024 to do with the idea that
Four. Yeah.
any investable project was sitting at such a high multiple for early investors that the probability of it just going down as well as your money having invested in it was like so high that people turning to meme coins in hindsight seems pretty fair as to why people would have done that then. I wanted to ask you if you think that there is sort of like a ceiling for this belief in financial nihilism or this like gambling mentality towards meme coins.
Yeah. I definitely believe so. I I actually think that one of the hardest things for that's I actually think that financial, like personally, that financial nihilism sort of approach now is just not the way forward, because I think that's like the thesis played out, and it played
Mm,
out quite substantially and to massive valuations. Like I think people in crypto forget like the a, a meme coin going to multi-billion dollars worth of market cap is ridiculous.
yeah,
Like at the end of the day, it is ridiculous. And if you think about the wealth effect that we've like literally printed out of thin air for quite a substantial amount of people, the it is not sustainable for these things to continually create like this these multi-billion dollar valuations. And
mm,
I think like when you go back to early 2024 when we had WIF hit $1 billion, and I
yeah,
think it was the first one, to hit 1 billion out of the Solana eco, right? The difference then to now was back then there was only so many coins. Like, yes, there were still new coins popping up, but there wasn't that many new coins popping up. So when the crowd that was playing on chain, which was quite small at the time, because like you said before, a lot of people were still saying that like Solana's a scam, it's a scam chain, and like every time like it made a local top on its way up to like $100, it was like it's over, it's over, it's over.
Yeah.
And when it actually started like taking off and people started subscribing more into that like financial nihilism sort of narrative,
Yeah.
when people wanted to pile into something, we all piled into the same thing because there was not that many things to choose from.
Yeah.
But now, since Pump Fund, and I remember like when Pump Fund came out, I've actually got like you can like search on my profile back in like March, I think last year, because Elon DM'd me and he was like, "Hey, I've got this product, check this out." And I was like, "Oh, cool, I'll check it out." And then when I saw it, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I could see the vision of what he was building because it solved that honeypot dodgy contract problem.
Yeah.
And it removed the need for the for a user that doesn't know how to code to release a coin. So the possibility of the coins to then be generated like is just infinite, and it was so cheap to use and all of that. And I was just like, I wish I could have gone back in time at that point and really dug into it a bit more. But trying to pick a winner when it's a meme is very hard. And I've only ever done well being late early, never being early. But that point in time created so much dilution and dispersion in coins that like when the crowd of people, like let's say it's like a city and Solana's a city. Let's say when the city was when you're in a small city, like I'm in Townsville, when you go out, majority of people go to the same bar or they go to the same club because there's only one or two clubs or one or two bars to go to. When you go to New York City or somewhere else, there is going to be lots of bars and lots of clubs, but they're not going to be as packed as if unless there's an event that night or something. Otherwise, they're going to be quite averagely spread out all across.
Yeah.
And to try and get everyone to go to the same spot is very difficult, unless like you need like a population size to how much options you've got available to you. So Solana has like a very small population size relatively.
Yeah.
And a lot crypto does in general. And if everyone in Solana is, now trying to pick from multiple coins, and if you're the person that got in at 10 mil and you've got to 50 mil, you're going to sell for the 5x. But before there was, because now you can go to another coin 10 mil to 50 mil, another coin 10 mil to 50 mil, because there's so many people going from 10 to 50. Whereas before it was like, okay, there's not much to choose from. We're all going to get in. And then there was like, okay, there's no other coin that's running. Okay, I've got to get the winner. I've got to get the winner. So like it allowed these higher and higher things to play out. And that's why it was really rare to see any other coin hit these like multi-billion-dollar sort of valuations. And we didn't really see much more outside of Whiff and eventually Popcat. I think Rome hit, like a few kind of hit it, but it was like very select few. And then all of that's died down quite substantially. But then you've seen that exact same thing play out again now with AI. And if you just take away the fact that it was AI, and you just looked at it like it's just another coin, doesn't have any substantial use case or anything like that. It's no different to an NFT, no different to a meme coin. But you just slapped some AI label on it. And yes, they might be building something, but like all of that technology exists to a degree outside of crypto. And anyone that's like serious about AI isn't looking at anything that's being built in crypto and being like, that's amazing. And you've also seen that very few select coins do well in those multi-billion-dollar valuations. But then you've seen in the last few weeks, more and more coins pop up. And now it's really hard to pick the right one. And so what was easy to go from like, start to 100 mil is now more difficult. So now it's from start to 50 mil, and then eventually it's start to 20 mil, and then start to 10 mil, start to 5 mil. And then it just like euthanasia coasters all the way down. And you see this like with most sectors in crypto, because it's not, there's only so much money that can float around in the system. So unless everyone's piling into the same trade or the same asset, it's just going to get spread more and more across. So whilst you can get more adoption and more users, trying to convince that new group of people to all pile into the same thing that everyone else is piled in is very hard. So, at some point in time, they're going to go, well, no, I want to go to this thing or that thing. And then you'll have people that are like, no, 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 don't go to that club, come to this club. This club's better. And it's like those people that you see in the streets. They're like, oh, this club's got a huge queue to go into that club. And you're like, fuck that. I don't want to line up for that. Like, let's go somewhere else. Let's go somewhere else. And that's that sort of same sort of analogy, I guess, for like when things get too crowded. And I think that financial nihilism thing got so crowded, much the same. And so I think there's a innate desire for something to mean something, which is why AI did well, to a degree, because there was a crowd of people that wanted to believe in tech again, even though they might not really understand tech or anything. They just wanted to be able to justify it. And I think that that's going to be more and more prevalent going forward. It's just how that manifests, I don't really know.
Yeah. Before we move to AI, because I'm sure, much like our audience, we've all lost money and completely missed AI, so I don't want to go and shoot myself just yet about all the pain that will bring up. You mentioned a couple of things. I liked your analogy about the nightclub. I think may or may not have stated it, but Solana moving from Townsville-esque type city that only has 2 nightclubs to New York City with the hundreds and thousands of nightclubs is a really good analogy. I really like the fact that you touched on the pump fun inception point for where it really extrapolated a lot of the meme coin activity, and you talked about coins going from 0 to a billion, and then 0 to 100 million, and then 0 to 10 million, and so forth. I wanted to ask specifically around pump.fun before we transition to AI and so forth, but do you see the crypto space evolving outside of the pump.fun inception point of a lot of this stuff? The outside of the gambling and degeneracy, essentially.
I'm in two minds with this. So, and the reason I say this is because if you isolate crypto out of the conversation and you look at like the world as it is now, and if you go and socialize with a bunch of non-crypto people right now, a lot of them are very much into sports betting. I think that the sports betting like thing has become so massive, and like parlays, multi-parlays, and all that. Like that is a huge part of culture now. And if you look at that as one aspect, and then you look at the other aspect as like social media, like the Instagram, TikTok style things, like everyone's trying to sell you something, a course. Like there's so many people that are giving courses, and then there's people that are giving courses about making courses and all this sort of stuff. So like there's this huge financialization of so many different aspects of our lives now that like everyone's trying to make it in some way, shape, or form. Our obvious chosen way is like to go through crypto, but other people are doing like e-commerce, other people are doing, sports bet gambling, like they're happy to take a punt, like all this sort of thing. So I think that side of things is probably here to stay, but I don't think the pump fun type stuff in its current form has the ability to cross over to that demographic quite easily yet. But I think the things like Moonshot and so forth, if integrated properly on the right platforms, and if you had uh, I think it's like it's still, but like if you like, let's say TikTok a few years integration to, hey, this coin, this video that you're watching is related to this coin, and it was like directly integrated. It's not just like a link in the
Mm,
description. And you could bet on a meme going viral, and there was some sort of value accrual to. So like, let's say everyone that made a video related to a particular meme was essentially buying a position in the coin, or like getting a position of the coin because they made content. And then depending on how viral the content went that they made, they got paid money, or so forth, right? And then that
yeah.
drove up, or like that bought the coin or something. Like I can see some sort of connection like that. Like in the future, I don't know how the mechanism would work, but I could see in that case the pump fund style thing would take off. But I don't think in its current form, with all of the things that you've got to know and look at, like, oh, you've got to check for bundled supply, you've got to check for this and that. Like, there's so much shit that, like, when you were buying WIF 12 months ago, you weren't checking for any of that. Like,
Mm,
you were just buying. Whereas now, like, everyone's got all this like tooling and like um things that they check and all of that that just adds a layer of complexity that I think that the type of person that's willing to look at that and evaluate whether or not they want to gamble is quite small in the demographic. And they're not the same type of people that just want to punt a parlay based on some sport that they're going to watch. So, like, I think you need to bridge that gap between entertainment and um, financialism, financialization, in order to expand that market anymore.
mm,
Um, and I think it's possible. But that's why I think like CT in itself is a huge thing towards crypto, because it does provide a level of entertainment. Like I, even if I'm not trading or anything, like I still use CT as like my main source of entertainment. Like we have lore, we have culture, we have different characters, like we have all these like things that are happening that are like all real people, and it's like some form of like TMZ, but it's like the nerds TMZ.
that's a good
And
analogy.
there's so many different sub demographics within CT. It's like this analogy gets used a lot, but it's like a big MMO like video game in a sense, where like and the followers and engagement metrics. And then you've got the financialization aspect, where there's like you've got different builds that you can have. Like, are you the scalper? Are you the tank build with the long term holds? Like,
Mm,
are you the sniper? Like, there's so many different like like type of characters that you can play. And because there's no faces per se, because like the anonymity culture within it all means that like you can build a version of yourself online, that isn't just a video game thing, and there's a financial aspect to it which adds an element of power. You really can build characters, right? And you can do something that's quite entertaining. I think without that aspect, I don't think crypto would be as big as it, especially things like
yeah, yeah. I
pumped fun to exist.
I like your iteration of the thought process around the social and the token iteration. I always thought that that's where maybe NFTs come to light and probably take center stage. But I think with the success of meme coins, it's hard to not argue that that could be a thing. With this current bull market, what were some
Mm.
of the challenges that you had to face?
drinking the Kool-Aid again, I think. Um,
Again.
I think the biggest challenge for me, yeah, yeah. I think I think that think that that you will somehow do better um, in identifying your periods of euphoria, and that um, is is really hard. Like it's a personal discipline thing because you can either over-index to one side and be so emotionless about it and then miss a lot of upside because you need to have belief. Uh, but then you can over-index to the other side and have so much belief and be able to achieve, be able to ride, should I say, the upside. But then because you're such a believer, you also ride the downside.
Yeah.
Um, and I think switching between those modes sort of screws you up a lot. The financial nihilism thing, I think, took a toll on me for a long time
Yeah.
because I lost my passion and my interest for crypto.
Yeah.
Um, I was able to sort of find outlets through like the podcast and the pudgy stuff that I was doing to sort of like keep interested to a degree, but I lost interest in like that, like what am I actually doing here to begin with? Outside of like, I just want to get rich like tomorrow type mentality, which is like a really bad byproduct of the financial nihilism.
Mm.
Um, and I've like kind of like gotten rid of that now, and I've gone back to like I don't need to get a 2x every day in order to feel good about myself, and like chase all of these like coins that people are like scanning in the Telegram groups and all of that. Like the thing that made me do well in the first place was like buy, hold, hold for a lot much longer, hold for much longer, and then make some like key rotations and staying active in understanding the dynamic of where interest is on a higher time frame. But I felt myself going more lower and lower time frame because like that active trench trading was like the thing to do. Um, and I think that um, getting out of that mindset's been probably the most challenging. Also, I think the dynamics of like how people have like the people that are into crypto now didn't come through similar journeys.
Mm.
Like they didn't come in for the tech. They didn't come in for the financial system corruption type stuff where you felt frustrated with something and you saw that there was a problem that could be solved. Like a lot of the people that have come into it are just like, I'm here to make money. I'm here to gamble.
Yeah.
And when you interact with these people and you're like doing the same trades with them, it's like fun. But then when shit goes bad and everyone's like, oh, everything's a scam, everything's a scam. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
no, you're just repeating what like people on Twitter are saying. Like, it's not all a scam.
Yeah.
Like, there is actual genuine stuff that is being built here. And I think having the mentality that it's a scam is really quite toxic because it doesn't allow you to see the opportunities that potentially could come up. And even to the point where like things like airdrop farming, like that, a lot of like airdrop farming originally was using the product. It was like all my best airdrops have always come from me using a product that I ended up genuinely liking, and I thought was really cool. All of the airdrops that like didn't really do anything for me, apart from like tier, um, um, were just stuff that like I tried to farm. And I think that mentality of like, okay, you've got to farm this, you've got to do that, you've got to trade this, you've got to trade that. It's like it's very financialized, but it's like, hold on, like in order to build like a thesis on this stuff, you kind of got to understand it. And
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people actually understand it. They're just like, I've downloaded Phantom, I've traded some memes. This meme's going to go to infinity. It's going to go to 10 billion one day. Not understanding how, you know, what $10 billion market cap actually means in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, like I think the Kool-Aid of last cycle, seeing Doge rally to however much it did and how much SHIB rallied to was really easy for people to just conceptualize whatever bag they were in. and sort of apply that same mental framework to their assets that they hold.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a terrible thing to do, in my opinion, because it was the only sort of tangible mental model you could really apply to it if you were trying to maximize the most amount of upside. But I really do think that your analogy around the nightclubs and, Solana being relatively unused and undiscovered at a period of time where there was only a handful of memes versus 6 million coins created daily through pump.fun is a very vast difference. And I think that is where it kind of weighs in on one's ability to kind of hold something to much larger valuations. I wanted to ask you as well, just because we've been
I think
going
that
for... Oh,
just on that, so just on that, the with Dogecoin and SHIB, right? It's actually a really interesting point that you make there, because I think that nightclub analogy works for that as well.
Mm,
So with memes, right? You Doge and SHIB went to the valuations they did because they were the memes, right?
mm,
Like there was Safe Moon as well, but they realistically they were the memes. Because you had like the NFTs, but that was somewhat different because it had a utility aspect to it, and it was a new technology and everything. But Doge and Sheeb really were the memes. Doge was the original meme.
mm,
Sheeb was the meme that people bought because they missed Doge, right? Then the Solana memes, everyone goes, imagine if it does a sheep, imagine if it does a doge,
yeah,
right? But then, like that euthanasia cycle, it's like over time, it's that like those things are never going to do a sheep or a doge because you don't have everyone piling into it.
yeah,
Because it's like the game theory prisoner dilemmas thing. Like you're going to get people that defect from that belief at much earlier stages because Doge and Sheep happened because there was no predecessor.
mm,
But the moment you've got a predecessor and you've got a relative situation to draw off of, people are going to sell a lot earlier because the person that's like, okay, this has done 50% of the move of sheep or 10% of it or whatever. It's like, right, I've came out to set what I've done. And then everyone's got a different risk tolerance or a different entry point. So what your entry is, if you were early enough to it, you achieved the sheep outcome, but because you bought much earlier.
yeah,
And so there's so many people along that curve on that price appreciation that it these things have a ceiling. And I don't think that, like, and I could be wrong on this, but I would happily make a bet that like majority of the memes that like everyone says is going to go to like $5-10 billion valuations will never ever get close,
mm,
unless something fundamentally changes within interest rates and macro and all of that sort of things. Like the amount of supporting things that the world had in it at its time, like with COVID, people being locked down, people having stimulus checks, interest rates being near zero, those all allowed that to happen. We have none of those catalysts now. And unless you understand those sort of things and what effects that they can have on an overall market, like I think people just go, Doge went to this, so this must be able to do it too.
yeah,
And I think that is going to kill a lot of people this cycle.
yeah. I actually think that you're probably right. Even though it's probably not good for the branding of this space if everyone can't become a
It's
millionaire off Doge. But I like your thoughts, and this probably leads into the next question. But what do you think of the market now, and where do you see it heading? And then feel free to add in things that you're bullish on and things that you're not so bullish on or bearish on.
um so market now, market has been quite challenging because I honestly thought after 8 months of ranging that this Bitcoin move to the upside would be a lot more straightforward, especially after we broke 100K.
Yeah.
So that's I haven't done as like after that Trump election move. Like I really thought we would do a lot better uh, on a shorter time frame, like consistently.
Mm.
Not this like short move up, chop again, short move up, chop again. Like it's been a lot. It hasn't played out in my mind a bit more like I thought it would. But again, like I say this after saying everything I said before, like you can't look back at history and go, well, look, the last few times it did the same thing, it's just gone up only. Whereas like Bitcoin has just been this like range chop, range chop, range chop, and like we could range for forever. But I think the huge difference, and like it's not a new opinion, but the huge difference this market is that majority of the participants that started in this market didn't start with BTC as their base. They all started with ETH, and I'm an example of that as well. I just didn't have as much ETH, and I didn't benefit from ETH from the previous cycle, so I rotated my ETH.
Mm.
And my ETH exposure was always through penguins. But I still think that majority, and I, I still think a majority of the wealth of the participants is still held in ETH, despite the fact of Solana's popularity over the last 12 months. I think a lot more of the newer participants have their wealth in Sol, but I think of the previous cycle participants, there's still a lot of wealth held in ETH. And I think that's why ETH is so capped at like 4K. I think the moment ETH ever breaks 4K and actually generally runs for it, then that is the bull market. That is the actual bull market. Will be the moment that it breaks that 4K ceiling that we seem to, I don't know, burn villages in Africa every time we seem to hit that point. So I don't think that we can cycle top without ETH having broken all-time high. I just rationalize that like ETH just being as big as it is and with all the things that it's got going for it with ETFs and that never have like broken all-time high. Like I just can't see that happening. Like it just doesn't seem like, whilst there's a probability to it and like it seems like a very great max pain scenario, I just don't see it. And all in all, if you look at ETH like chart wise, like it's actually held price really nicely in this like little range that it's doing, like this consolidation under 4K.
Mm.
So I actually think, given how poorly it's performed over the last like 2 years, that it's actually probably one of the better bets going forward. And I hate saying that because I don't want to be bullish ETH, but I don't have bets on ETH other than Penguin. Like it's not a trade that I'm particularly fond in, but I think that the moment ETH does eventually decide to break out, that like that is the trade, and I don't think you can call cycle top unless ETH does break all-time high. That it just doesn't seem right that like every other coin for the most part has been able to, like every other major coin, like XRP's broken all-time highs, BTC's broken all-time highs, like BTC's multiples up from all-time highs.
Yeah.
Solana touched its all-time high, but ETH's just not come close. So I think there's still a lot of room for us to go. As for what I'm bullish on, I've moved away from memes. Like I think memes will have their time again, and I still think there's multiples to be had. I just don't think there's multiples to be had unless you're like active trench trading, like you're in the right FNF groups, you've got the right connections to the right people. I just think for the most part, like you might be able to scalp stuff from like, sub $1 million market caps to like $1 to $5 million market caps. But I don't think that we can sustain a market where we have multiple meme coins at multiple $1 billion valuations. Like I just don't see it. So I think where you want to be allocating is something that's got like, I don't know, I don't know what to sound cringy, but like some sort of tech or something that's like genuinely new. I still think like stuff like Solana could do well, but like Solana's got a lot of like headwinds with the unlocks and everything happening. I've obviously been publicly bullish on Hyperliquid. I really like Hyperliquid from a tech perspective, and as well as like a tokenomics perspective as well. But there is a lot of people bullish Hyperliquid, and it's very hard to want to buy something that like such a large portion of wealthy people on CT are wanting to buy.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like I respect the AI trade. I think that it's interesting. I just don't like any of the coins that have come out so far because I just don't think they're doing anything interesting. I think they're just slapping an AI sticker on it and people are like just bidding on it because it's AI. But I think there will be an AI coin that breaks that quite substantially and ends up being quite a trade that you can make money off of. And whereas like still meme coins, like I can justify mentally because I'm like, it's good about zero, it's goes to zero. Like with AI, it's like I have to convince myself it's good tech and I have to put money on it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm lying to myself.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Sounding really retarded and dirty, because this is quite wrong, but it's like I said in a chat today, I said, like, if you're straight, like, you know that you could get sucked off by a dude and it would probably make you feel good. But you don't want to do it.
Oh, man, I did not see
me,
that
like...
posted in the chat. When did you post this? What?
No, this is in a different chat. It was a different chat. I was like, oh shit. I think the stream stopped.
Yeah, I've been we're still recording, but I've been trying to click start streaming and it doesn't do anything. So
shit. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can just release it to the tube. But yeah. Anyway, that was kind of like my mentality for it. It's like I just feel shit doing it. And like it's just like I just feel gross wanting to buy it because I'm like I'm trying to, like, I'm lying to myself, if you know what I mean. So it's like that's why I just can't do the AI thing.
Yeah. No, I did not see you post that. But that's probably one of the hardest analogies to say publicly for something that's investable.
You did say I should answer the questions and something that I'd be really proud about. So I definitely fucked that up just then. But
nah, I think it's fine because we weren't live streaming anyway. So this is just you and me on a private call. You talking about something clearly sexual in reference to coins. I think that's completely normal crypto Twitter behavior. So basically, you're bullish on ETH, you're bullish on hype, less bullish on memes heading into the
So I still have some meme positions because I still think that like there's an asymmetric upside, but I've like mentally written them off. The only meme that I'm like somewhat like bullish on, I wouldn't really call it a meme, is just like the Pengu coin. I just think that like the Pudgy, like I'm obviously Pudgy biased, but like I've been in it long enough for them to see what they've been able to deliver. So I think that the founder is interested in delivering on value for it. So I think there's an incentive for them to want to do it. to bring value to it. Because if they don't bring value to it, then like the whole project fails. So I am bullish on that because I don't think they haven't had enough of time to execute on it yet. Or conditions haven't been in their favor yet for it to do well. But outside of that, I think there's huge opportunity to actually go around and look for good teams and protocols that have some good fundamentals behind them, like either through tech or some sort of like good tokenomics. So I think like it's probably a good time to really take a step back and go, right, what can I like deep dive into and find something that you're like genuinely interested in, that's actually solving a problem of sorts. That's not just like it's this, but with a different name or a different ticker. So I think that there's still plenty of opportunity in that. It's just what does that like, and where is that at the moment, which is why I like hype. And the main reason I like hype is that whilst I like Solana and it's fast and all of that, it didn't do the centralized limit order book stuff that I really enjoyed, that I thought it could do early on, like back in 2021. And from a trading experience point of view, the automated market making pools are terrible, as you can see with like low liquidity, high market cap value stuff that you see. And I think that like fucks people up a lot because they think that they have $10,000 of a coin, or like let's say $100,000 of a coin, but then there's like a 50K liquidity in the pool. So it's like you don't actually have that much. Whereas at least with centralized limit order books, like you've got the spread, you've got the depth of the book, it's trading at a price, and you've got an indication of a somewhat better indication of how you're able to exit, versus automated market maker, because providing liquidity in a centralized limit order book is a bit different. And I think that like trading is much better when you can place limit orders and things like that. And the fact that it's like inbuilt into the layer one, that's I see the vision, if you know what I mean. Whereas I don't think Solana. I think Solana has a huge future, and I think Solana is the great monolithic chain for everything. But I like Hype's thing in the way that it can be the finance chain for like trading, for centralized exchange type experience.
Yeah, I mean, we've come such a long way from gas fees being around hundreds of dollars to a experience like Hype. So I think that speaks volumes to obviously the industry. Outside of being bullish on ETH and Hype and not so bullish on meme coins, what new trends do you see emerging that are potentially investable? Or not investable, but new trends in general?
Yeah, new trends. Like I think uh, uh, no one's done this well today, but I honestly think that SocialFi and gaming are still two areas that have incredible opportunity if can be done right. And the two problems that I think need to be solved, and I think it's probably less of a trend, but more problem that needs to be solved. One, in SocialFi, I think the experience of social platforms is quite annoying, for the most part, because every social platform that you want to use, you have to sign up, you have to set up details, you don't carry any of your connections or friends lists or anything like that between one social platform to another.
The cold start problem. Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah. So like if I want to talk to you, Swiss, and you use Facebook Messenger, and I want to talk to another friend, but they use WhatsApp, and then want to talk to another friend, they use WeChat. It's really annoying having to use multiple different platforms to talk to someone. And in cases, some friends, and some they you talk to them on multiple platforms, and you're like, do I message them on this platform or do I message them on this platform?
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine that realize that if they want to get a message reply from me, they need to message me on Twitter or on Telegram, because they're not going to get me on Messenger because I barely check it, but their normal place of access is Messenger. So I think if you could solve that through account abstraction, and like you had this thing where like there was like messaging protocols, and like it didn't matter what platform someone used, like you could have the interface that Messenger gave you and you could talk to people. But if I preferred the WhatsApp interface, I could still do it. And if you could solve that using blockchain, like, I think that would be cool. So where the account was segregated, but you could interact with all these different apps, and you could still live within the rules of the app that you were using, but the account was segregated across. And then because the account segregated across anything that you linked between, it was able to sort of multi-chain type bridging experience, but through messaging and socials. I think that sort of aggregation would be cool. And I think that's a problem that needs to be solved, because it creates that friction or sort of experience where you get exhausted from using social media because you've just got too many things to use. So I think that's something that I think if someone in crypto solves properly, like sign in with Ethereum is great. If you sign in with your wallet, I think that kind of thing would be good. The other one for gaming, I still don't think one that's doing gaming has done it right. Like I always look to League of Legends. They use their biggest revenues comes from skins, from cosmetics.
Yeah.
And I think the way you do gaming with crypto isn't that you put the game on the blockchain, is that you build an awesome game, but you have cosmetics that are tradable. And you can look at, so the generation alpha, or some of the Zoomers, the young Zoomers, they use Roblox and things like that. And they trade within the game, and then they buy skins and they sell skins within the game, and they get Robux and things like that. So I think like crypto has that ability to do that. And if you could have those cosmetics, potentially, like, let's say Coca-Cola as a random brand, that's a really terrible example, but let's say that they want to release, maybe not Coke, let's say it's a movie that's come out, it's a Disney movie, there's a new character from Disney, they release a cosmetic skin type thing, but then if you buy that skin, and it's a collectible, and it's one of 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever skins that come out, you buy it, but then in any game that you play, and that chooses to be able to interact with that NFT type thing, then that collectible that you could wear in the game, doesn't matter what game you're playing, well, it does matter to a degree, but any game that wants to integrate the NFT, it has a version of that collectible. And then so because it's a collectible, it then becomes tradable. And because that's a rarity, people really want to buy and sell it. And League of Legends has like a classic example where the original season 1 and 2 players, like I think season 1, if you bought the game and it was actually on CD at the time, there was a skin for a character called Rammus, and it was like the Bowser skin. So it's like Bowser from Mario, and the character has a skin like that. But the only way for you to get that skin now is if you had one of those original accounts. So you can't transfer that skin from one account to another. The only thing you can do is buy that person's account. But then all the rank and experience and game history that you've got on your other accounts, you don't get to carry with you in order to have that skin. So you have to buy the account, and then you've got all the risks that come with buying accounts. Like people can change passwords, claim it's fraud, all of that. So I think like stuff like that where it was a collectible because it was rare, like that should be tradable and sellable. And then the game itself could then charge a fee on that. So every trade that happens, they collect a fee like OpenSea does. So I think those are two areas that I think, if executed on right, could be really big. And I had an idea before, but it's escaped me. But I sorry, what the other one is stables, like stablecoin spending, and remittances. I think that is huge. I don't know how you invest in that per se, but I still think like stuff like that is the biggest use case of crypto. And I think the more adoption you can get, like normalizing crypto spending in real life stuff is big. And then I think lastly, the biggest trend that I see probably in the next coming years is stuff like Infinex and Azure, where the front end that you interact with is chain agnostic. And if you have Ethereum, but you want to buy a meme coin in Solana, you can just buy it. It handles all of the chain swapping and all of that in the back end. But the front end experience is I've got some money, it's in an account, and I've got these different tokens in my account. They all belong on different chains, but as the user, I don't know that. I just want that coin, and I think the protocol or whatever that does that really well solves so many problems. And I think you want to be trying to be early on some of that. So I know Infinex is doing that well. I know Azure is trying to do something like that too. So I think that sort of stuff will be the big flavor coming up. And I don't think it's being appreciated yet. So I think like if you can farm stuff like Infinex and that, or like use the apps like as they release more updates, I think that would be one of those like no-brainer things in the future.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really good points there as well. Like I like the idea about like a friend tech that works and the founder doesn't, leave with a bunch of money, like some version
Yeah.
of um, DeSci or whatever it was called, decentralized social finance or something like that. Decentralized social.
So yeah.
I always thought that Instagram was probably the like one or two big pivots away from really capturing a lot of that, especially with the amount of attention that it gets for like I don't know too much about Zora, but like some level of like an NFT marketplace. I know they trialed a few times with having like your ability to showcase NFTs on there. And so maybe they'll pivot back to that at some point in the future. I wanted to get your thoughts. Well, actually, before I ask that question, I also liked the fact that you talked about stablecoin infrastructure as well as like Azure, and then also Infinex, because I think you're right. I think the experience of being able to swap your ETH for literally any asset anywhere would be such a benefit for users than having like 6 or 7 wallets in your browser tab and then, different setups there as well. I think gaming's a real big one because I think the slice of the pie is like quite large that I think there is an opportunity for um, some level of blockchain game that comes in. I think there are blockchain games that currently exist, and I think this might be a part of the issue is that they're just not interesting enough for you to really be interested in them. I've seen a few people play a few things. I've listened to people talk about how like certain chains or layer twos have such and such game and so many users and things like that, and it's just like you could probably say that it exists, but whether or not it is large enough to capture enough attention for people to be interested is a little bit different. I do like to think that there is some, because ultimately game developers and game companies that sell things like skins are incentivized to create some level of autonomous marketplace where they no longer control the
Correct. Yeah.
issuance of said skins. So if they always have buyers for their skins, then there's no real need to like cap them, because it's not you once you cap it and then make it tradable, you're kind of giving the value back to the people, and that's no real, for a company that wants to make as much money from a game, there's no real incentivization to kind of
Exactly.
like do that. So I think there will be some level of, like, for lack of a better term, proof of work, where there is some level of commitment to the game plus additional factors that yields you a net result that can be rewarded in some level of blockchain currency that you know you get ahead, that
Yeah.
just can't be easily botted by um, people
It.
that do
I
that.
think. I think the biggest thing with games is like they focus too much on having a token, right?
Mm,
And I actually think the token is like a hindrance, because the product of the game at that point is the token. So like DeFi Kingdoms is a classic of that. Like they had the NFTs, which are like the champions, like you could do all these quests and all of that. But like ultimately the thing that everyone cared about was the token. Like that was ultimately the end product. And I think if you are to do it properly, again, you one have to be able to make a game before any of the crypto stuff comes into it. So I feel like a, a successful game has to implement the the crypto stuff after. It can't be a crypto first and then game. It has to be good game, then implement crypto. And but crypto needs to be a problem for them. And I think stuff like Counter Strike or League of Legends, or something where skins, collectibles, cosmetics, items that can only be bought in, or items that can only be found from doing some sort of massive questing. Like if you look at RuneScape, like there's people that trade within RuneScape, like to this day.
mm,
And but then people will then buy and sell items in a marketplace and like the Grand Exchange or whatnot. But then like you can load up money to then buy those items, and you can sell those items for real money too. And I don't think RuneScape captures a lot of that money. So I feel like if you've got a game where you can be uh, like the man in the middle, where you capture the fees, that's got to be an incentive. But then, like you said, like if I can just be the marketplace in itself and not actually have the users capture any value, like why would I not just do that instead? But I feel like games that have been around a long time, where there's not much demand for new content, but there's more demand for existing or older content, trying to monetize that older content in order to capture the fees on those trades that people want to buy, because like an old skin that only 1,000 people have got, that's where the incentives got to come from. Otherwise you've got to have a bunch of like gaming devs that are aligned to crypto and have enough money that they're not trying to make money off of the game. They're just wanting it to um, sort of be successful in its own right, because they want to see a crypto game succeed. Um, but I just, yeah, can't see it happening unless the incentives aligned properly.
yeah, I think it's one of those. I think people have all the time in the world to get this right, because there's no real rush to try and build a really
Mm,
good game, because it's like the overall result of a really good game will speak for itself. It doesn't matter how long it takes to be built. I always thought that the best way to get users was to essentially just build out a very simple game, but your users are just CT NFT communities, and basically you just plug and play your um, obviously connecting to sites with cold wallets and stuff is not great, but like you connect your wallet that has your NFT in it, and then you automatically play as that character in whatever game it was. Because I think if you look at what Fortnite does with their advertising, they advertise the opportunity to play as like different skins because Fortnite didn't have
Mm.
characters. The characters came once the success of Fortnite became apparent, and then once they got to a point where they were large, they could like use the likes of Disney or use the likes of other big brands to get certain out of game or out of world in the context of Fortnite characters into that game. And I think that and I don't want to discredit the work of um, like Prime or Parallel Colony and stuff like that. It's just I will not really look at game dynamics enough to want to participate because the easiest way to make me want to participate is to show me that you want me there, if that makes sense. Because like
Mm.
if you look at the parallel avatars, none of them are relatable, and nor do they really
No.
make sense. It was the same with like the Star Atlas game on Solana. You know,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
spend a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
time building out the game to make it look cool, but like if you came to me and said, "Hey man, we're building this game, but don't worry, like we'll make it so that there's only 200 Kevins that can ever sign up to this game because you've got one of the Kevins."
Mm, mm,
I'd be like, dude, I don't care what it is. The fact that I can like plug in and just be Kevin in your game is enough for me to just try it because you're kind of signaling that you make me like
mm,
you're inviting me to play it. So you could just have like, and this might sound completely stupid. You could just have a uh, like a Mario Kart Super Smash Bros. Or a Mario Party or I think I said Mario Kart, but Mario Kart game where you just have your own NFTs in that game. You don't need to create characters from the
yeah,
start,
yeah.
and you get to just race as your character in that game, and you just write. I don't know how easy this is, but you just basically write code to say that if you select this character, then their cart will just get customized to the way that your character is. And I think that
So
that
I think
is
Oh
a
Baby Games is doing that. Um, but I don't think they've. I played it a little bit, but I don't think they fully did that. But yeah, that's it was a Mario Kart style game, which I think if you had the NFT of certain collections, you could play it as
yeah,
your
and I
NFT.
and I don't
Um,
think
yeah.
building games are easy either. I think just it's one of those ones that I'll try and keep an eye on to see what generates out of it. But um, ideally, trying to get gamers from like there was a gamer that I really respected who does like shorts. His name's called he's got long hair. Used to work at Blizzard. I can't remember his name, but he gave a really good like short, which was wrong, analysis of why NFTs in games are bad. And his reasoning was, what if your account gets locked, you can't get back into it, and you accidentally like put your skins somewhere where you can't get them back? He's like, it's just silly because you won't be able to recover it. And it's like, he kind of like missed the point as to why it was
Yeah.
beneficial to have stuff as NFTs in the
Yeah.
first place, which is they're yours. So like he highlights a
Yeah.
downside of like human error, but didn't really highlight the fact that it's no longer the games because he talks about a lot of the time like games freezing different people from playing it due to certain behaviors. But
Mm, mm, mm.
I feel like I'm digressing on the gaming front, but coming up on 2.5 hours of talking to you on this pod, one of my closing questions were, what are some of the best lessons you've learned in the space so far?
Um, best lesson I've learned in the space is that um, you 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 need to stick around.
Mm.
That is the best lesson. I think people. I think the ability for anyone at any starting level they are financially to make money um, is unlike anything that we've got in this world. Like there is no other industry that allows you. You could start with absolutely no money and still make money
Mm.
because through airdrop farms or just using products and there's just so many different ways that you can start from an actual zero basis and make money. And if you put the time and effort into it and you're not just chasing whatever's like the hottest thing of the day, and you actually dig your, you dig yourself in and try and learn, like the opportunity for success is unlike anything that exists right now. Like
Yeah.
I can't think of any other industry or space that gives you the opportunity that we've got for one. And I think the the other big lesson is that um, you know em- the emotional control that you need to gain from having any sort of financial investment in any industry and the understanding of market cycles. You people live through in decades
Yeah.
within weeks sometimes.
Yeah.
You learn lessons that you will never learn if you were a stock investor, maybe investor, depending on what you're less so investing in, but maybe more so like housing or any longer term asset um, that most people expose themselves to over a much longer period of time. And the understanding of how financial markets work is unparalleled from crypto, just from the volatility and the market cycles that we have. I think that's probably the biggest lesson, um, and and just the lessons you learn about yourself, on how you handle greed, how you handle despair,
Yeah.
just through all of that. I think you get to know yourself quite well. And then I'd say, lastly, just on, um, I'd say, the the social network you can build through um, natural curiosity in a space. Like it's quite hard in the real world to find your people. Like if you're, going to university um, and you get stuck in a social group because that's just the people that you had around you and whatnot. It's quite hard to even try and make friends on the internet or like talk to random people on the internet. But um, I think crypto now like has taught me that there are a lot of similar people to myself, and there's a lot of people that I've been able to, like, even in the past 2 years, just like make connections with, and I talk to every day, like yourself, and the other Brotatos and the other guys that I've met subsequently from meeting. There are people in this world that are like-minded and have similar values, and um, there's no other space that can give you that. And I've come to appreciate it, which is why I get quite upset when people say everything's a scam, because it's not a scam. Because
Yeah.
people I talk to, they're not scammers.
Yeah.
Yes, there are scammers. Yes, there's a lot of them. Yes, there's a lot of scams. But the industry is not a scam.
Yeah.
Yes, it's overinflated. Yes, it's bubble. Yes, there's some bullshit, but the people in it are genuine. A lot of the technology is genuine, and a lot of so commonplace in the future that it's actually solving some real issues that are really stupid that we still do. Like just fucking bank transfers
Yeah.
are still some of the most stupid things to deal with in this world. We have the technology to fix it. It's just not ready yet.
Yeah.
Well, it's not adopted yet, if you know what I mean. So I think just the big lesson is stick around, find your people, make your connections, be naturally curious, play around in things, do the difficult thing, find the most friction inducing thing and play around with it, because a lot of the times you'll get rewarded, and it won't be it won't be the thing that you think that you're putting all the time and effort into. It'll be that one thing, one time, that ends up rewarding you, and it literally change your life. So I think that's the biggest lesson that I've got from this space.
Yeah. No, I think you highlighted on the fact that like sticking around was the one that I picked up on, because I think that um, not that you are necessarily rewarded just for sticking around, but it's the fact that you're like sticking through the worst times to reap the benefits of the good times. Um,
Mm, mm.
yeah, my
It's quite analogous, and right, like
yeah,
a lot of people give up in a lot of aspects. Like it might be a job that might be going through, it might be just a shit period of a job and whatnot, or it might be relationship, might be whatever. But sometimes sticking through the bad stuff actually leads to better stuff in the future, rather than just like, right, that was too hard, we'll just move on. And there's a time and place for that, right? Like you've got to learn when to quit.
yeah,
But I think it it I think the in a space like this, like sticking around actually has benefits, and you can, as long as you're naturally curious and you're sticking around for the right reasons. Um,
yeah. It's
yeah.
also a skill sharpener too, because you get to battle test different theses and different
Mm,
thought process and investment frameworks and stuff like that. So the sticking around through the shittier times definitely hardens you as a market participant. Is That's what I feel.
mm.
My last question was, what was your body count? But we don't have to answer that. We can look to wrap this up since
Look,
we've been.
even if I wanted to ask that, even if I wanted to answer, I don't know if I could. So it's all
No,
right.
that's all good. We won't discuss that. You've already said some pretty incriminating things on this pod, but I cannot wait for people to just casually be listening to this while like making a coffee in the kitchen, and then all of a sudden you say that line and they're just like, what? Um, but was there anything that you wanted to wrap this up with, or anything that we may not have touched on during this chat?
um, yeah, bears are fucked, and and I, I think no, honestly, that appreciate it. It's been really fun. I don't know if there's anything I really want to say. I think I said most of what I wanted to say. But I think the key thing, and I've said it a couple of times, is just like, stop thinking that this shit's a scam.
Mm,
Um, just because you're buying really dodgy stuff doesn't mean that it's a scam. I think there's a lot to it if you actually take the time out and actually go through the history of what all of this space began, and trying to understand like the cypherpunk aspects of it, and why this shit even got to where it did in the first place.
yeah,
I think that it's quite important to get those, understand history, and to then help navigate the future. Because I think you just coming into this space and you're like, look, I'm just going to trade coins because it's attention, and I'm just trading attention, and I'm just trying to extract as much value as I can. I think that may work when cycles are great and it's a bull market, but when it's a bear market, you'll easily just lose everything that you gained, because the the conditions used to, and if you haven't educated yourself on the history, like it's quite when the tides shift, you don't recognize it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. And I would also extend that out to not just be crypto, but just general market cycles. I think there's a book called Tales of a Stock Operator.
Yeah.
That's really quite interesting. It's from the early 1900s, and if you read that book, he's talking about stocks and markets back in like the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and you just applied crypto to it, you'd be like, wow, this sounds just like crypto,
Yeah.
but this is like 100 years ago. And I think it's really quite important that you go back and you do that. And so I did a lot of that during the bear, which is great,
Yeah.
which I think helped me a lot. And it's quite hard to do that stuff during a bull market because you feel like you need to pay attention. But I feel
Yes.
like that sort of stuff is really important because it helps understand human psychology and markets a lot more. And I think if you're a newer participant, I would highly encourage that you try and understand that a lot better because I think it'll set you up better for success in the future.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to close it out. So yeah. We stopped streaming a while ago due to some technical difficulties because Swiss is a bit of a boomer. But Wonel, I just wanted to thank you for being the tester, but also the first interview of this thing. We don't know what it is yet, but I really appreciated you coming on and answering some of these hard-hitting questions and expanding on various different things, and also talking about your journey from when you got in to what you think about now. I definitely learned a little bit more about why you changed some of the perspectives that you had on different coins, and I get a little bit more about why you decided to buy some of those like Solana memes pretty early on as they were pumping, because I think that for me was quite hard to do. So it was good to get your perspective on it and why you were bullish in that period of time. So I hope you had a good time being in the hot seat and answering a lot of these questions. And
I did.
yeah, and yeah, just wanted to say thanks. It was a really good chat, and appreciate everyone who was on the stream before it dropped out, and for the people asking questions. It was good to see you guys there. And yeah, thank you for everyone that's listening now on YouTube. And yeah, don't know what else to say to wrap this up, if I'm honest with you, but we'll probably throw in a
That was
closing.
good, man. You,
I might.
I will. I'll
You go.
repeat what I've said before. But Swiss is a very good host. So yeah,
Oh, that's very nice of you. What we might
it's,
do for our intros and outros is we might just throw an old school Bunnings ad on either side to give it some Australian authenticity. But yeah.
yes, yes.
All right, that's it. We're going to stop recording. So thank you very much for listening. Please
No,
like and
thank you,
subscribe.
Swiss.
And thank you again, Wonel, for coming on and chatting with me. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.